Imagine this. You are standing at the threshold of everything you ever said you wanted. The job you dreamed about. The relationship that feels almost too good to be true. The opportunity that could change the trajectory of your entire life. You're there. Your hand is on the door. You know that all you have to do is take one more step. Just one. Cross the threshold. Move forward. But something strange happens. You hesitate. You second-guess. You feel an invisible weight in your chest, as if some unseen hand is gripping your heart and whispering, "Not yet." And then, you walk away. You make a polite excuse. You procrastinate. You self-distract. You scroll endlessly. You delay. And when you finally glance back, the door has closed. The moment has passed. And the worst part? You tell yourself it was probably for the best. But deep down, late at night, when no one's watching, something inside of you knows you sabotaged yourself again, and you can't explain why. Now, imagine waking up every morning carrying that weight. You have the intelligence, the skills, the potential. People tell you how talented you are, how you're destined for something greater. And yet, you remain stuck, chained to the same cycle. One step forward, two steps back. Why? Why do you keep getting in your own way? Why does the very thing you desire most seem to trigger the strongest resistance within you? Is it fear? Maybe. Laziness? Unlikely. A lack of discipline? Perhaps. But what if it's none of those? What if something deeper, something more insidious, is at work beneath the surface? There's a paradox buried inside you, and it's tearing you apart. You want to succeed, but you're terrified of what success will require of you. You crave freedom, yet you cling to the comfort of your old chains. You yearn for change, but a part of you fears that changing will mean leaving behind the version of yourself you've spent your whole life becoming. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." What if the greatest obstacle to your success isn't the world around you, but the shadow within you? The shadow you refuse to face. The version of yourself you've banished into the dark. The neglected child, the silent anger, the unprocessed grief. And that shadow, it isn't just hiding there, waiting. It's pulling the strings. Every time you're on the verge of a breakthrough, it whispers reasons to hold back. Every time you reach for more, it reminds you of all the times you failed before. Every time you dare to believe in yourself, it laughs, because it knows the truth. You don't sabotage yourself because you're weak. You sabotage yourself because you are terrified of who you might become if you actually succeeded. What if you became someone you didn't recognize? What if you became someone others no longer understood? What if you rose so high that there was no one left to catch you if you fell? There is a name for this fear. Nietzsche called it the vertigo of freedom, the dizzying realization that at any moment you are free to act, to change, to become. That same freedom paralyzes you, because with every choice you make, something is lost. And part of you would rather stay in the familiar hell of the known than risk the unknowable chaos of something better. This is the tragedy no one talks about. Success demands a death. The death of who you were. The death of who people thought you were. The death of your excuses, your justifications, your protective stories. And deep inside, a quiet, ancient part of you is fighting to survive. Not because it hates you, but because it believes it's protecting you. From change, from risk, from pain. But here's the question you cannot avoid. If you don't let that old self die, what will you become? Imagine standing at the edge of your life, staring down at the ashes of all the opportunities you never took. Imagine realizing that the prison you spent years trying to escape was built by your own hands. Imagine wondering in the final moments, what could have been if you had just dared to cross the threshold? Why do you keep sabotaging your own success? Not because you are weak, but because there is a war inside you, and you haven't chosen a side yet. But once you understand the enemy, you can win, and that begins now. The hidden problem and its psychological, philosophical roots. It's a cruel trick of the mind. You think you're in control. You think you are the one making the choices, the one deciding when to work, when to rest, when to chase after the life you claim to want. But what if you're not? What if the part of you that pulls the strings, the part that dictates your every hesitation, your every impulse to stall, distract, and retreat, isn't really you at all? Carl Jung believed that within every person exists an unconscious force, the shadow self, a collection of everything you've suppressed, repressed, and refused to acknowledge. Your fears, your failures, your secret desires, your unspoken resentments. The shadow is everything you've locked away in the dark, convinced that if you ignore it long enough, it will simply disappear. But it doesn't. It festers, it grows, and it does something even worse. It acts. Because the parts of you that you refuse to integrate do not simply vanish. They control you from beneath the surface, from the depths of your psyche, where they manipulate your actions in ways so subtle, so insidious, you mistake them for your own free will. This is why you procrastinate. This is why you delay, why you self-destruct, why you hesitate at the last moment. Not because you consciously choose to, but because something deeper inside you, something you won't look at, has chosen for you. And it does this for a reason. The fear of what comes next. Imagine a prisoner who has spent decades in a cage. The door is suddenly flung open. They are free to leave, to walk into the world beyond, to reclaim their life. But they don't move. They hesitate. Because freedom, after years of captivity, is not exhilarating. It is terrifying. This is what Nietzsche called the vertigo of freedom. The sickening, dizzying realization that you are free to act, free to change, free to walk into the unknown at any time. And yet, you don't. Because the moment you do, the past self, the one who was safe in its patterns, its limits, its justifications, ceases to exist. And so, instead of stepping forward, you retreat. Back to old habits. Back to familiar distractions. Back to the comfort of self-imposed limitations. Because failure is painful, but success? Success is obliteration. To succeed is to shatter the fragile identity you've spent your entire life reinforcing. To succeed is to become someone new. And the question your unconscious mind keeps asking, the question you refuse to answer, is, who will I be if I'm no longer the person who fails? It is easier to sabotage yourself than to face the existential terror of transformation. The comfort of the known. Arthur Schopenhauer once described the human condition as a constant oscillation between pain and boredom. We suffer when we strive, but the moment we achieve what we wanted, a new kind of suffering emerges, the suffering of emptiness. And so, we create distractions. Not because we are lazy, but because we are afraid of what will happen if we have nothing left to chase. This is why you never follow through. Why you delay. Why you keep one foot in and one foot out of everything you do. Because the chase is safer than the catch. Because the pursuit of success allows you to maintain the illusion that one day everything will make sense. But actually succeeding? That would mean confronting the brutal reality that there is no final destination, only the endless abyss of what now? This is why people sabotage relationships, careers, health, happiness. Not because they don't want these things, but because having them would mean facing the terrifying responsibility of sustaining them. It is easier to believe that happiness is just out of reach than to hold it in your hands and realize you still feel empty. And so you destroy what you build. Because as long as you are in the cycle of destruction and rebuilding, you don't have to face what's underneath. But what happens when you can no longer outrun yourself? The illusion of control. Self-sabotage is not an accident. It is a strategy, a defense mechanism, a way to preserve control in a world where control is an illusion. Because if you fail by your own hand, at least you were the one who decided it. If you ruin the relationship first, at least you weren't the one abandoned. If you never fully try, at least you never fully lose. This is what Sartre meant when he wrote about self-deception, the idea that we lie to ourselves because the truth is unbearable. And the truth is this: most people do not fear failure. They fear success. Because success comes with an unbearable weight, the weight of self-ownership, of accountability, of no longer being able to blame the world for their limitations. Most people are more comfortable being powerless victims of circumstance than powerful architects of their own destiny. Because if you are powerless, nothing is ever your fault. But if you are powerful, then every wasted moment, every lost opportunity, every unrealized dream is no longer the fault of society, your upbringing, your circumstances. It is yours. And that kind of responsibility is terrifying. The trap you don't see. You believe that you are sabotaging yourself because you are weak, because you lack motivation, because you are missing some secret formula that other successful people must have figured out. But the truth is far worse. You sabotage yourself because, on some unconscious level, you believe that success would mean the death of the person you think you are. And so you stay in the cycle. One step forward, 2 steps back. Convincing yourself that next time will be different. But next time will not be different. Not until you confront the enemy within. Because self-sabotage is not the disease. It is a symptom of a deeper, unspoken truth. You do not trust yourself with success. And until you do, you will continue to destroy the things you claim to want. So the real question is this: how do you break free? How do you dismantle the invisible chains? How do you finally escape the prison of your own making? The answer lies not in fighting the enemy, but in understanding it. And that is what we will uncover next. The unseen consequences. There's something you haven't fully grasped yet. You've believed, perhaps, that this struggle, this war with yourself, was personal, private, an internal conflict playing out quietly behind your closed doors. But it's not. It's everywhere. And it's affecting everything. The consequences of self-sabotage are not limited to your life alone. They ripple outward, shaping your relationships, your environment, your society, and even the very culture you live in. And the most unsettling part? This force is largely invisible, silent, hidden in plain sight. You don't notice it until it's too late, until the damage has already been done, until the life you could have lived is gone. The subtle death of potential. Imagine this: every human being is born with an inherent potential, an inner fire, a force capable of bending reality to will. Nietzsche called it the will to power, the innate drive not merely to survive, but to expand, to grow, to overcome. And yet most people live as if they are powerless, as if they are passengers in a vehicle they refuse to drive. They wake, they work, they repeat, not because they lack potential, but because they are actively suppressing it, choking it into silence. And every time you sabotage your success, every time you choose comfort over courage, that inner fire dims. Not with a sudden extinguishing, but a slow, suffocating fade. One unspoken dream at a time, one avoided risk, one step never taken, until one day you no longer feel the fire at all. You tell yourself you are tired. You call it burnout. You label it depression. But underneath it all is the death of potential. Not stolen from you, but surrendered. The psychological collapse of the self. Viktor Frankl once said, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." And so you turn to the endless distractions of modern life. The dopamine loops of social media, the binge cycles of mindless entertainment, the numbing agents of substances, shopping, consumption. You tell yourself it's harmless. You tell yourself it's necessary. But in truth, it's the slow collapse of your psychological self. Because when you deny the deeper call of your own life's purpose, your psyche doesn't remain neutral. It fragments. It tears itself apart. The conscious mind knows something is wrong. It feels the dissonance, the haunting sense that you're meant for something more, but are trapped in something less. And so, anxiety grows, depression deepens, addictions multiply. Not because you are weak or broken, but because the self cannot survive long in captivity without breaking down. The more you sabotage, the more you shatter yourself. And eventually, there are pieces missing you can't quite account for anymore. The collective decay of society. But this doesn't end with the individual. Look around. A society where self-sabotage is the norm becomes a culture of resignation. It becomes a civilization that no longer strives for greatness, but settles for convenience. A civilization that no longer values courage, but rewards conformity. You live in a world that manufactures distractions to keep you docile, a world that profits from your sabotage. Because a person who sabotages their own power is easy to control. They do not challenge the status quo. They do not question authority. They do not create revolutions. They consume. They obey. And they believe this is freedom. Aldous Huxley foresaw this in Brave New World. A world where people are not enslaved by chains, but by pleasure. Where no one needs to be oppressed, because they have been conditioned to love their servitude. And this servitude begins with self-sabotage. The subtle choice to play small. The unconscious agreement to abandon your own potential. And when enough individuals make this choice, the entire system tilts toward decay. Not with violence, but with quiet, smiling apathy. The unseen war. Every time you sabotage yourself, you are engaged in an unseen war. Not against society, not against other people, but against the most dangerous adversary you will ever face. Your own resistance to becoming what you are capable of becoming. Carl Jung called this the individuation process, the painful but necessary path to wholeness. But most people never walk it, because it requires stepping beyond the shadow and into integration. And integration is terrifying, It demands that you stop lying to yourself. It demands that you confront not only your darkness, but also your brilliance. And brilliance is heavy. It is a burden to know you could be more, because the moment you accept it, you are accountable to it. You are responsible for the life you could create, and you can no longer hide behind excuses or circumstances. The urgency of escape. But you cannot delay this realization forever. Because the longer you remain in sabotage, the more the consequences compound. Opportunities vanish. Relationships wither. Energy depletes. And there will come a day when you realize you are no longer resisting your potential. You have lost it. And no amount of regret will bring it back. That is the true cost of self-sabotage. Not the missed chances, but the lost self. The version of you that could have existed but never did. The life you were meant to live, now only a ghost in your memory. This is why time matters. This is why urgency matters. Not because life is short, but because you are fragile, and the soul you were meant to become cannot wait forever. The lead in to the breakthrough. You stand now at a different threshold, the one between understanding and action. You can no longer pretend you don't see it. You can no longer hide behind ignorance. You sabotage yourself not because you are cursed, but because you are afraid of your power. You sabotage yourself not because you are broken, but because you are unwilling to let go of who you were. But what if you let go? What if you chose to cross the threshold? What if you decided that today is the day you rebel against the old self? Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because if you don't, who will you be when the fire dies out completely? When the potential has turned to ash? When the time you thought you had runs out? The rebellion begins the moment you decide to face the truth. And that rebellion starts here. The rebellion. How to break free. The rebellion doesn't begin with force. It begins with a question. A dangerous, subversive question that has the power to unravel the entire structure you've spent years unconsciously building. And the question is this: what if everything you believe about yourself is a lie? Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, a deliberate, calculated lie told by the part of you that fears change more than it fears suffering. The lie that says you're not ready. The lie that says you're not capable. The lie that says you are safer in your smallness than you are in your power. But here's the truth no one dares speak aloud. You are not the person you think you are. You are not the name you were given. You are not the story you keep repeating. You are not your failures, your traumas, or your limitations. You are something far more dangerous. You are potential in motion. You are chaos waiting to become order. You are the architect of what happens next. And the moment you accept that, the rebellion begins. The first act of rebellion, radical responsibility. Take back the keys. Even if your hands are shaking, even if they are bloody from years of pounding on locked doors. Radical responsibility means this: no one is coming to save you, and that is your greatest gift. Because when no one is coming, there is no longer a reason to wait. There is only action. There is only now. Nietzsche believed that we are most human when we take full responsibility for our existence. Not just for our actions, but for our meaning, for our creation, for our becoming. You cannot outrun this truth anymore. No therapist, no teacher, no guru, no lover can make the choice for you. You either reclaim your life or you don't. And that decision is yours alone. The second act of rebellion, integration, not erasure. Carl Jung said, "I'd rather be whole than good." You have spent your life trying to be good, trying to be acceptable, trying to be safe. And in doing so, you've carved away the most vital parts of yourself and buried them in the shadow. But the rebellion doesn't ask you to kill the old self. It asks you to integrate it, to sit with your fear, to listen to your anger, to learn from your shame, because these are not your enemies. They are exiled kings and queens. They hold keys to the power you've forgotten you possess. The self that sabotages you is not evil. It is scared. It is trying to protect you from risk. But you are not a child anymore. You do not need protection from your own life. You need participation. You need leadership. And you are the only one who can lead yourself forward. The third act of rebellion: choose the harder path. You have been conditioned to believe that ease equals happiness, that the path of least resistance is the path of wisdom. But wisdom, real wisdom, lies in resistance, in voluntary struggle, in willingly walking toward what terrifies you. Schopenhauer argued that suffering is the fundamental condition of life. But it is chosen suffering that transforms us. The athlete chooses the hardship of training. The artist chooses the agony of creation. The thinker chooses the discomfort of questioning every assumption. If you do not choose your suffering, it will be chosen for you. And it will look like self-sabotage. It will look like regret. It will look like a life half-lived. So choose the harder path. Choose the confrontation. Choose the conversation you're avoiding. Choose the work that scares you. Choose the life you keep pretending is beyond your reach. Because the moment you choose, the chains loosen, and you realize they were never locked at all. The fourth act of rebellion: create before you're ready. You have believed the lie that you need to heal before you act, that you need to be perfect before you begin, that you need more time. But the clock is not ticking on your healing. It is ticking on your life. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Existence precedes essence." You become by doing. You do not become by waiting. You do not find clarity first and act second. You act first, and clarity finds you. The rebellion demands that you create now. Not someday, not when you feel ready, but now. Write the book. Start the business. End the toxic relationship. Move to the city. Make the call. Say the thing. Whatever it is you've convinced yourself you're not ready for, do it before the voice convinces you not to. The fifth act of rebellion: find the others abound. You cannot walk this path alone. You shouldn't, because while the battle begins inside you, it is fought alongside others. The ones who are willing to live without illusions. The ones who are willing to tell the truth even when it costs them. The ones who refuse to live in quiet resignation. Find them. Build with them. Because your rebellion isn't just for you. It's for the world you leave behind. A world where self-sabotage is no longer the norm. Where success is no longer feared. Where human beings are no longer conditioned to stay small. You are already free. Now act like it. There is no future version of you that has this figured out. There is only this version. The one who is scared and tired but still breathing. The one who still has a choice. And that choice is everything. You are not trapped. You never were. The rebellion isn't coming. It's here. And it looks like you. standing at the threshold of your life, no longer hesitating. Lead in to the final revelation. But there is one more truth you must face, one more realization that changes everything. You have reclaimed your power. You have chosen your rebellion, but there is still the ultimate understanding that eludes you. And without it, the cycle could still return. The sabotage could still creep back in. The ultimate truth is waiting. And when you see it, nothing will ever be the same again. The ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization. Imagine this. You've done everything right. You've fought the battle within. You've faced your shadow. You've taken radical responsibility, integrated your hidden self, chosen the harder path, acted before you were ready, and found your tribe of fellow rebels. You're no longer waiting for permission. You're no longer asking if you're ready. You've stepped beyond the old self. You've claimed the life you once believed was impossible. And yet, something inside you still feels uneasy, as if there's a final thread you haven't pulled, as if at any moment the whole thing could unravel again. Why? Because there is one last truth, and it's the hardest to accept, the most difficult to live by, but also the most liberating. You will sabotage yourself again. And that's okay. This is the final paradox. No matter how much inner work you do, no matter how aware you become, no matter how many old stories you rewrite, there will be moments when you fall back into the old patterns. You will sabotage yourself again. You will betray your own progress. You will hesitate at the threshold again. Because self-sabotage isn't an enemy to be vanquished. It's a shadow you will always carry, and learning to live in harmony with it is the ultimate mastery. Carl Jung warned us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your darkness doesn't disappear. You simply stop being afraid of it. You stop pretending it's not there. And when it shows up, when the old voices whisper, when the fear grips your chest, when the urge to self-destruct resurfaces, you don't fight it. You recognize it, you acknowledge it, and then you choose differently. The final shift: you are not your thoughts, you are the one who chooses. This is where most people stumble. They believe that the voices in their head are them, that the fear is them, that the doubt, the hesitation, the urge to run, the desire to quit, that it all defines who they are. But here is the ultimate truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses which thought to follow. You are not your fear. You are the one who decides whether fear gets to drive the car or sit quietly in the back seat. You are not the sabotage. You are the one who watches it rise, nods in recognition, and walks forward anyway. This is radical freedom, not the absence of fear, but the power to act regardless of it. The death of the illusion of perfection. For years, you may have believed that one day you would reach a place where everything was easy, where self-sabotage was a distant memory, where motivation was automatic and the war within you was over. But that day never comes. Because life is not a problem to be solved. It is a tension to be navigated. Aldous Huxley once said, "The end cannot justify the means, for the simple and obvious reason that the means employed determine the nature of the ends produced." The way you live now is the life you have. If you wait for the absence of resistance, you will wait forever. If you wait until you're no longer afraid, you will never act. But if you learn to dance with resistance, if you learn to move forward with the fear, with the doubt, you win every single time. Freedom is not what you think it is. You believe that freedom was the absence of limits, the absence of sabotage, the absence of anything that could hold you back. But true freedom is the power to act, even when everything inside you screams not to. Freedom is not comfort. Freedom is responsibility. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is condemned to be free." And in that condemnation lies your ultimate liberation. You are free to fail. You are free to succeed. You are free to sabotage yourself 1,000 times and still choose to rise. Because freedom is not something given, it's something seized, and you've had the power all along. The sacred duty of becoming. You are not here by accident. You did not survive everything you have survived to remain unchanged. There is a sacred duty in becoming who you were meant to be. Not just for yourself, but for those who are watching you, waiting to see if someone can break free. For the world that desperately needs people who live without illusions. For the future that depends on human beings who are no longer prisoners of their own minds. The rebellion was never just about you. It was about the life you create, the love you give, the courage you inspire, and the truth you speak. A truth that might set someone else free, simply because you had the courage to embody it. This is your invitation. So here it is, the invitation you've been waiting for. Not from me, from yourself. The version of you that never stopped believing in something more. The version of you that knows. You are capable of incredible things. You are the author of this story. You are no longer waiting to be saved, because you were the hero all along. And heroes make choices. They rise. They act. They rebel. They become. The final image, a threshold crossed. Imagine yourself standing again at that threshold, the one you've approached 100 times before. But this time, you don't hesitate. You take a deep breath. You feel the fear, the doubt, the shadow, and you step forward anyway, because you are no longer running from yourself. You are walking with yourself, whole, powerful, free, and the life waiting on the other side? It's already yours. You just had to claim it. This time, you do not look back.